We advise that you seek your own independent advice to ensure your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. Approval of today's agenda. Do I have a motion?
Yes, you do. So moved.
First and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Approval of the minutes of the meeting of March the 10th, 2014. Do I have a motion?
I move. I so move.
Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or the commission requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda. Commissioners or anyone from the audience would like anyone?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to move to have the item called Authorize a Valet Stand 2316 12th Avenue South removed from the consent agenda and put on the public hearing.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone in the audience want anything? Okay. Items on the consent agenda, proposal number 2014 M00-2AB 001, a request to abandon a portion of Park Avenue from 40th Avenue North westward to the dead end at Railroad. Elkins Avenue from 40th Avenue North westward to the dead end. Alley number 1198 from 40th Avenue North westward to the dead end at a railroad, alley number 1011. I've read that before. Avenue North westward to a dead end. All easements to be abandoned and relocated, requested by Barge, Coffin, and Associates. Proposal number 2014 M003AB 001, a request to abandon a portion of alley number 442, an easements and utilities to be relocated north of the intersection, unnumbered alley, and on the easterly property line of tax map and parcel number 104080250001, requested by Bradley Art Brunt Cummins LLP. Proposal number 2014 M004AB 001, request to abandon alley number 204, easement and utilities to be abandoned and relocated between 4th Avenue North and 5th Avenue North at Jackson Court between 4th Avenue North and 5th Avenue North, easements and utilities to be abandoned and relocated, requested by Little John Engineering and Associates. All right, resolutions number 0414. Authorize loading zone at 105 Mallory Street. Authorize no trucks over 8 tons at Masonwood Drive and Dove Overside Drive. Authorize always stop on Chickasaw and Montgomery Avenue, Rock Street and Plum Street, Louise Russell Drive at Laurie Jones Drive. Authorize stop on Gardner Lane and Melta Drive. Remove stop on Laurie Jones and Wilford Park Drive. Village Way to English Village Drive. All right, that's all of them. Do we need a hand vote on these, don't we? All in favor of the items on the consent agenda, please raise your right hand. Hey, 100%. Thank you. All right, we have one item here that we pulled off the consent agenda requested by one of the commissioners, but we may have some folks in the audience here that may want to speak on this. But rules of the public hearing Keep comments to 3 minutes or less. Each person representing will be expected to offer new information that has not been made previously. Once the public hearing has been closed, no additional comments will be heard unless a public hearing is officially reopened. And I believe Commissioner Green has requested for one of the items to be pulled off for public hearing. Authorize a valet stand at 2316 12th Avenue South from 10 a.m. till 12 a.m. Commissioner Green.
Yes, I understand that there's some folks who'd like to speak to that issue.
Okay. Anyone in the audience that would like to speak on that issue? Ma'am, you, sir, either one of you can come forward. But before you leave, be sure and sign the register over there with your name and address, please.
And can you go to, do we want her at the lectern? Can you go to the lectern here?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Commissioner, fellow commissioners, thank you for your service and thank you for allowing me to address you today. My name is Lindsay Moffitt. I live at 2402 Belmont Boulevard in Belmont-Hillsborough neighborhood. On February 12th of this year, at the request of Belmont-Hillsborough neighbor President David Thompson, a meeting was held at Josephine to discuss the parking situation. Many neighbors had complained that valet parking was occurring on neighborhood streets, particularly Elmwood Avenue and Linden, as well as speeding through the alleyways. Attending that meeting was Councilmember Berkeley Allen, Park Nashville's Kyle Demiola, Chris Neese of Josephine, Wood Caldwell of Southeast Venture, David Thompson, and me. At that time, Kyle Demiola stated that he had a permit from Rory Rowan to have a valet stand. When pressed, he said it was in process. I told him he needed to go before the Traffic and Parking Commission. By ordinance, they issue permits. We were assured that it was taken care of. Complaints continued, and after speaking with Diane Marshall, I learned that the stand did not have a permit, but that a temporary permit would be issued. I understand that they did not apply last month for a permit, and another temporary permit was granted. I'm aware of numerous complaints for alley speeding, on-street valet parking, and driveway blocking. Joel Griffith and Thomas Solinsky, both whom live on Elmwood, have contacted Diane Marshall and Rory Rowan, yet the parking issues continue. I'm also aware that 1221 Partners, the owners of the property across the street, have had problems with the valet service as well. Given the consistency of the poor operation of the stand and the fact that the parking area designated for valet is 3 car lengths away from the stand for patrons, I request that this application be denied. It is my understanding that under the statute 12-41040, cancellation of a permit could occur if the commission determines that the valet operation is creating a hazard, traffic conditions, and serious disruption of traffic flow, or is otherwise inimical to public health, safety, and welfare. I did send in to Chip Knopf a picture of the valet stand parking cars the wrong way on the street, loading and offloading, and then pulling out into traffic going the wrong way. Okay, thank you. Thank you, that's all I have to say.
Does any of the commissioners have anything to say? Sir, would you like to come up next?
Yes.
Come on up, then the commissioners may have some questions for each one of you.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. My name is Kyle Demiola. I own Park Nashville at the valet stand. Like Lindsay mentioned, we met about a month ago to resolve issues. We did have 3 to 4 of our valets park on the street. They were not blocking any driveways. We resolved that. We've secured an off-site parking lot about a block away, which is the norm for any valet stand at any restaurant. One of the challenges we do face without having this set valet lane are vehicles parked and left overnight for whatever reason, going to 12 South. So when those vehicles are parked there, obviously cars cannot pull in and we cannot valet. We have yet to tow any vehicles there, and it does create quite a traffic jam when those lanes aren't available to us. With that said, we do have pedestrians and guests that will cross into oncoming traffic once they see the valet umbrella. So I'm assuming most of the pictures you have in front of you will show that. And like Lindsay mentioned, when the valets pull out into oncoming traffic, the reason being the guest pulled in from the opposite side of the road facing the opposite way. We have, our valets are instructed, tell them no, do not do that. We have signage on the opposite end showing them where they need to come. When that happens, it does wreak havoc on the traffic. Having the valet lane there and us having access to tow vehicles that are there, that are blocking traffic, everything will run smooth. I'm unaware of any issues in the past month and a half. Nothing's been brought to my attention of any traffic congestion, any valets parking on the street, blocking driveways. We've yet to run into that since our last meeting. Thank you. Yeah, as you can see, I guess that is a Jeep or an SUV. Probably came in from the other side facing the opposite lane of traffic, and our valet, that was the quickest option to pull them out. They're, when a car pulls in the wrong lane of traffic, there's really nothing we can do except get out in the middle of the street, stop traffic, allow them to back up, which...
Can I say something?
Wait just a moment, please. All right, go ahead.
So this is, this is very accurate. Car pulling in the opposite direction and our valets taking it out as quick as they can.
Commissioner.
Just for the record, when did you begin your valet stand at this restaurant?
Josephine's has been operating for around 4 months.
Okay. When did you apply for your permit before the commission?
We applied probably 2 months ago.
Okay.
The beginning of, it was around the beginning of March.
Okay. May I ask why you didn't apply prior to starting your valet stand?
We just use the 2 parking lots to bring cars in. We thought it'd just be a typical, lane closure, and then speak with Diane, and they'd put a temporary valet in there.
Okay.
The application that we received for the valet was received on 2/28. And they did have a temporary permit, and we do that for valet companies whenever they have trial basis for operations of valets. We do temporary permits for that.
Okay. Because, my concern is that a valet stand was operating there prior to any permit being issued. And that strikes me as an issue because we just had a court ruling on another issue that came before this commission to where it was very important that the process be followed to properly implement the statutes by code. And it appears in this case we got a valet stand that was operating prior to any permit being issued or even before the application was done. Because he said he started in January and we got an application 2/28.
Mr. Chairman, the Department of Public Works is allowed by code to issue temporary permits in the right-of-way for up to 90 days. We do this with valet lanes because it's good to see if they're going to work right before we come in and request the commission to authorize a permanent valet zone. So everything's within the code.
I have a couple of questions, just 2 really. So on your request, are you requesting for, it looks like there's 2 spots for parking right there.
Correct.
Are you requesting for both of those spots to be
Yes.
valet parking? And I guess follow-up question to that, from what times?
It would be 10 a.m. to 12 a.m.
10 to 12 a.m.
Yes, and that's for brunch on the weekends, lunch during the weekdays, which Josephine may or may not keep doing.
My only concern about the valet on this particular street, kind of observing some of the other similar developments that we have in these type of neighborhoods, is that those two spots are there to accommodate parking for the patrons to this particular building. And this street is a two-way street, one flow of traffic in each direction. Sometimes, and I've driven by Josephine's, I know it's a pretty popular place. Are you guys prepared to keep that traffic flowing on that street? Because if you get more than two cars, if you get more than two patrons coming to eat at this restaurant, then that's your two spots gone right there. So then there's a potential for a backup down the street of other patrons trying to get valet parking. So I guess my question is, are you prepared for that, and how do you guys address that issue? Is that something that you guys have considered?
We have, and how you address that, there's a curb there with a tree in it. You do a curb cut to extend that to 4 spaces. After speaking with Diane, you can't really tell from this picture. That would give us four parking spaces, basically a full lane similar to Cantina Laredo, to give us enough room to whip cars down. Josephine's does not have, 4, 5, 6 cars pulling in at once. It's two to three at the very most. But that's why it's so crucial having access to those 2 spaces, keeping them free of any vehicles parking during the daytime, overnight. We can help facilitate the traffic flow. If 2 cars do pull in at once, there may be, a 30-second wait until we get the car out of there.
But that's pulling in and coming out. So you got to accommodate for people coming to park and your guys bringing a car back. Where do they go?
They go around the street and pull right there in the same spot.
So the same spot. There. I guess that's kind of my point. I mean, am I making sense on that? I mean, that can be a potential issue.
It is.
For that. I mean, and I'm not trying to be tough, but I know this area very well, and we as a commission have dealt with numerous of traffic and parking congestion issues on this street, and that's a major concern of mine, being able to accommodate pulling a car in and pulling a car out. How many valet guys do you typically have on peak hours?
We run 3 at peak hours. The average car count is 30 vehicles per evening. This is spaced out through the night. I understand it's just one lane going both ways. And if 3 to 4 vehicles pull in at the same time, those spaces are full. The traffic will be held up for about a minute unless we can do a curb cut and extend those 2 parking spaces to 4 for a valet lane. With the economic development in that area, 4 to 5 restaurants shooting up here within the next year, it's going to be congested. You are going to have parking issues. The streets will be full with people just parking to go to the restaurants.
And on the curb cut, Chip, is that something that the commission would have to pay for?
No. It would be up to the owner of the person wanting it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Just for the commissioners and the audience, could you tell us how many cars you park daily maybe, or weekly, or what kind of parking are you relieving in that area with your service?
Absolutely. During the weeknights, we average around 25 to 30 cars. Friday and Saturday nights, sometimes we do 40. Brunches, we average anywhere from 17 to 25 vehicles. And they are thinking about doing away with their lunch menu, Josephine's, just being open for dinner. So the lunches during the week would not be an issue. Now, Friday and Saturday, we do have brunches, and they will continue to do those. So, weekly, anywhere from 150 to 200 vehicles. Restaurants sits about 80, give or take, depending on if people are out at the patio or in the bar.
Mr. Chairman, because we've been in a whole lot of issues with this 12 South piece and the court ruling we just received, our concern as a commission is safety. And I always want to go back to that from now on so that it's just clear. And so this picture just shows us that safety is an issue, though. If you got a car pulling out, two-way street, pulling out on the wrong side of the street by the valet, which he admits, So my concern is the safety piece. I mean, you've already said there's no way you can control that, and that when it happens, your guy would just swoop out as quick as he could to get the car out of that. How are you going to address the safety issues?
You know, as far as people pulling in from the wrong side of the road, we've stationed a valet on the opposite side of the road to tell them to stop. We have the appropriate signage. You know, if people pull into oncoming traffic and we have signage, valets telling them to stop, and they still do that, they're, you know.
So,
Okay.
so you said you have someone on the opposite side of the street?
We've had
So
somebody-
is that operating a valet on both sides of the street then?
No, they were just there to stop the car from pulling over. We weren't running any valet operation on the other side of the street.
One other question I have, you were talking about how far away you take the cars. Would you repeat again how far the lot is away that you take the cars?
It's about a block away on Elmwood.
Is that lot then available for these patrons instead of valet parking to go there and park as well?
No, it's a private lot.
It's a private lot.
That we lease for valet parking. We have around 25 spaces in that lot, 24 to 25. We also use the property lot right before you get out of the garage, but you know, any guests coming to any of the restaurants, whether it be the ice cream shop, the clothing store, or Josephine's, they have access to those lots as well.
Okay. John?
Question, is there, I think when Josephine's first opened, it did not have an arrangement with the parking in the building, that's the new building. It now has that arrangements to where, isn't it 30 cars?
Correct.
That's about how many you're parking?
Correct.
I mean, my question is, we have a safety issue, and if there's parking that's adjacent in the building, I kind of question the validity of why we need a stand.
A lot of those spaces do fill up with people going here, there, and yonder. So when you hear we have 30 spaces, realistically during the week, we can use maybe 7 to 10 of those, if that, just because they are full of other vehicles going to restaurants near Josephine's and across the street, the Taqueria del Sol, and the hair place. So that's why we lease the private lot about a block away for any overflow vehicles.
Yeah, I'm not so much I understand your need for valet parking. People like to valet when they go to restaurants in these kind of areas. But again, my concern is just the traffic flow on that street. Have you explored with that parking that John, Commissioner Green mentioned, have you explored any other options with the property owner that you could maybe operate a valet stand off the street, or explored any options like that close by, that you could possibly move your operation off of this street in this area right here? Because that just bothers me. I think that's a major safety concern.
I understand, and it's not the most ideal spot for valet operation in the 12 South District. But with that said, no, there's not another location in front of the restaurant that can be, signage can easily be posted directing them to the valet stand. The other two locations are behind 12 South and also behind the clothing store on the building where the garage, where the parking garage is. There'd be no way for any guests to see that unless they were looking for it. And I've also been out there just to watch when our valets were not out there, and we still have people pull over on the opposite side of the road to park when there's no valet station, no box, no nothing. Vehicles are turned the wrong way, and it does impede traffic with or without the valet stand being there.
Okay, thank you. I believe the young lady that was up first would like to come back to the podium.
I really just want to make you aware, Kyle, that this car that was pulled in was driven away by two women. So it was, and I have a picture of them. So it was your valet that pulled in the incorrect direction on the street. The second point I'd like to make to the commissioners is that the lot where he is parking is under lease for Flipside Restaurant, which is currently under construction. And once it's opened, those parking spaces are leased, which is recorded the zoning commissioners had them record that lease. So that will not be available for your valet parking.
With that said, we do have alternative parking and other private lots available for when that happens. So with the correct allotted amount of spaces, so that won't be an issue.
All right. I believe your time's up. Thank you. Commissioners?
One last thing for now. Council Lady Moore sends her support for the valet permit. She wanted to promote the relationship that she has with the restaurant. She says they've been very good neighbors of hers and have always helped out the area when they can. Benny talked to her earlier. Anything else that she added, Benny?
No, that's about it. She was unable to attend today, and like I said, she said that as Chip already stated, the restaurant has been very agreeable and helpful with the neighborhood. And if she saw any other alternative, maybe that the commission could come up with, she was agreeable to that, but she did not feel that there was any malicious intent as far as the valet stand and what they were doing, and she was in support.
Okay.
I know that this restaurant sits in Ms. Moore's district, because I think the dividing line between 17 and 18 is down the middle of 12. This issue does affect Ms. Allen. Has anyone talked to Ms. Allen?
Well, no, because it's in Ms. Moore's district.
Okay. Well,
The letter that would have gone out from us as far as staff would go to Ms. Moore. Okay. And she is the person that spoke with the owner and has I understand because they have a lot of issues like that. They back up to each other. But as it stands, that property does fall in her district.
All right. Chip, if a valet stand is authorized, how long is the permit for if the commission authorizes the stand?
The permit is for a 1-year period, and it's subject to renewal, and we will review any violations that we receive, and if we determine that the valet is not operating properly, we will bring it back to the commission to have it rescinded.
How are those violations received?
Excuse me?
How are the violations received? I mean, who makes a report of the violations?
Basically, we as staff review all valet operations. We also work with the Metropolitan Police Department.
Have you received complaints about this valet stand?
I have received a couple of complaints about them driving through neighborhoods, and we are addressing those issues.
All right. Well, one thought that I have is it legally, can we do a permit for a shorter period of time, say 90 days, as kind of a trial period to see how this works? And if no more complaints are received, then it seems the stand is operating better. If complaints are continuing to be received, then we have an issue. I'm trying to find a middle way to where...
John, I was actually thinking the same thing, but I was going to say, could we address that through what you say you could do a temporary for 90 days? So in a temporary, so could we just address that so grant them temporary operation for the 90-day period, and then you guys will monitor whether or not if we're continuing to get complaints from them, and then if not, then we can put this on the agenda in 90 days.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think that's an appropriate action by this commission. I might let legal explain.
Yeah, the code provision does specifically say that the term of a valet service parking permit is 1 year. So I don't think that can be adjusted by the commission. Would the temporary permit be like a lane closure permit, Mark?
Yes, and now what you might do is, since we've already issued a temporary permit, you could defer it maybe for 1 more month to then come back and evaluate if there's any safety issues or anything that come up. But I don't think this commission should be doing a temporary valet zone.
Yeah, that would be an administrative permit granted by Public Works staff rather than a permit granted by this commission.
I'll make a motion to defer. Okay, go ahead.
Diane, you said one thing about driving through the neighborhood. Do they go more than one way to get to this lot?
honestly do not know. Kyle may have an answer for that because I do not know.
Yes.
More than one way?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioners, anyone else?
I have a quick question about the restaurant itself and what their attitude is on how much they feel this valet is significant to their business. Obviously, they think it is to some extent because you're there, but in reality, is it going to keep customers away from the business? Because I respect your business a great deal. You know, I'm a business person. I totally understand that. But the key question may very well be as well, how much Josephine's, the restaurant, considers this as a viable part of their continuing business.
Okay. Well, public hearing is closed as far as they're concerned. This is just among the commissioners.
Can I now make my motion to?
Yes, sir.
I just have one
defer?
question.
Oh.
Will the temporary permit, will that expire before our next meeting to vote on this deferment, or will you issue another temporary permit?
No, we'll make sure we have a permit for it.
Okay.
If you want to defer 1 month, we can make sure it's permitted for 1 more month.
Thank you.
Because I've got a question going back to your comment earlier, Mark, which is when a valet stand opens and there's a temporary when does that clock start running? Because I'm confused, because it sounds like the valet stand started and then the permit was issued. And now they're so I'm a little confused on the sequencing of events and when the 90 days started and when it runs out, please.
I don't know if I have your answer right now. So I don't know.
There are cases, and I'm not saying this is one of them, there are cases where people go out and start an operation and we don't even know about it until somebody drives by. I'm not saying that happened here, but as soon as it all came together, we issued the temporary permit. But the dates, I'm not sure.
Okay. Steve?
I'd like to continue my motion to defer this to the next meeting to give us a chance to see exactly what issues may arise in the next 30 days before we make an ultimate decision on granting them this permanent or this parking.
Well, first, we have a motion to defer it for 30 days. Do we have a second?
I do. I second.
Have a second. All in favor of deferring it for 30 days, raise your right hand. All right. Thank y'all. Appreciate you coming. All right, on new business, we have Mr. Bob Murphy here that he would like to talk a couple of minutes here about the mobility study. Bob, appreciate you being here today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to give you an update on our multimodal transportation study. We've got several slides. I'm going to probably go through these pretty quickly, and then if you have any questions later, we can address those. We've been working on this study since last July. We have a very strong consultant team that's helping us with this project, and we intend to wrap this study up probably by the end of May. This slide shows the work flow and project timeline. I'm not going to go through this at all, but I did want to point out a few key points. First of all, is in the study, we've done existing analysis where we evaluated current traffic and parking conditions, including included as part of that was a very extensive data collection process I'll talk about in just a minute. We also looked at how much Nashville is going to grow over the next 10 years. So we identified projected development that's going to occur over the next 10 years and develop traffic projections to try to address future traffic growth. And then went through analysis of that, and finally our final step is to look at what needs to happen in the study area, which is focused on the downtown area. We, as part of this project, we're having 3 open houses to gather input. We've already had 2 of those open houses, and we're getting ready to have the 3rd open house. And we also had an online survey I'll touch on briefly in a minute. We've gone through a very comprehensive data collection process and analysis. We did traffic counts at most of the intersections downtown, about 115 of them, including bicycle and pedestrian counts. We collected parking occupancy counts at all of the parking garages and lots in the downtown area, as well as on-street parking. And then we went through a very thorough existing condition analysis that looked at all modes: vehicles, bicycles, pedestrians, transit, and as I mentioned, parking analysis is part of that too. This slide just shows highlights some of the type of the parking occupancy information that we gathered. If you look at the chart on the left, you can see how we established an inventory of all the parking downtown. The counts identified the occupancy, and current occupancies downtown are below demand. Now, I will point out that is an overall conclusion, because we actually analyzed parking on a block-by-block basis, and there were several blocks, particularly in the core, where demand approaches capacity. So there are some things that need to be addressed with parking.
Is that
John?
Standard? What's considered capacity? Is 70% capacity? Or
usually it varies, but 85% is a good approximation. Because you don't want your parking occupancy so high, like take it in a parking garage. If it's like over 90%, people will be driving around a lot looking for that last space, and that's not very efficient. Okay. Now, for our future conditions analysis, we developed traffic projections for 10 years out for the year 2023. And as I mentioned, we developed traffic projections as well as parking projections. We analyzed the results of those projections and came up with levels of service for intersections as well as bicycles and pedestrian levels of service, and then looked at future parking conditions and the occupancy levels that we project with those. This next slide shows an example of the results of the future conditions analysis. So this slide shows which intersections are projected to experience poor levels of service in the year 2023. So you can see, particularly under what we consider development scenario 2, that there are a number of intersections that will experience some capacity conditions unless other mitigation measures are taken. And then this slide shows the results of our projected parking demand, and and this is on a block-by-block basis, like I mentioned. So the circles with the red indicate blocks where there will be parking that is greater than 85% occupancy. So it's clear that there will be needed in the future some additional parking facilities developed in the area, and we are in the process of addressing those as we determine the mitigation measures for the study. As I mentioned, we've already had 2 open house meetings that we set up to gather public input. The first one was held October of last year, and the latest one was in January. We got a lot of good input from people that showed up with a lot of ideas about what they saw as some recommendations that could be implemented to improve traffic flow for the current conditions as well as the future. We did an online survey where we obtained a lot of great information. We asked a number of questions. We ended up getting about 400 responses, and like I said, a lot of good information. For example, in this slide, we asked what was the primary transportation challenge that, in their opinion, and as you can see, traffic and parking was certainly the top, but I think you can also see that transit as well as bicycle and pedestrian accessibility got some pretty good responses also. And then this is just a couple more examples of the type of questions that we asked and the responses we got. This one is dealing with mainly pedestrian accessibility in the downtown area. The next slide shows a couple of questions we asked about parking and traffic, and being too expensive was identified as the main parking issue, and of course traffic congestion was as the main traffic issue. But we asked, like I said, a number of questions and got a lot of good input from that. So all of those questions, as well as the rest of the analysis, will be incorporated in our final study. We're going to have our final open house coming up at the end of this month. And at this open house, our goal is to present recommended projects to address the traffic, parking, transit, bicycle, pedestrian issues, and then try to get input from the public as whether or not they have any additional ideas or suggestions that we can incorporate into our study. And then we plan to wrap up the study soon after that. And what we'll be looking at in terms of potential recommendations like I said, it's a wide variety of, we're trying to address all modes and be as comprehensive as possible. So we'll have recommendations regarding roadway improvements, including reconstructing streets to be complete streets, as well as roadway connections like the Division Street extension would be an example. Additional turn lanes at intersections or realigning offset intersections, particularly in the Sobro area. Additional recommendations will include some bike recommendations, such as new facilities like bike lanes and bike parking, pedestrian recommendations like new and improved sidewalks, as well as pedestrian connections that would be important. And then finally, recommendations for improving transit reliability and frequency, as well as parking improvements to address the future traffic, future parking demand issues. We intend to wrap this study up at the end of May, and I think with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
One question I have, which might not be your purview, is who establishes the parking fees at the new convention center?
I believe that is Metro, I think. But Diane, maybe...
I think it was the Convention Center Authority, right?
The Convention Center Authority would probably be...
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'd just like to ask, and thanks, Bob, so much for presenting today. I think this is going to be a great study for the city. I was just curious, are you looking at motorcycle and scooter, Vespa-type parking as part of the study, and where those opportunities might be? I know you mentioned bicycle and the need for that, but that's something I was downtown this weekend and noticed that it's, that there's more and more motorcycles in the downtown area.
That's a very good point. We didn't specifically, collect that data as part of the existing analysis, but I think that's something we can incorporate into the study probably as far as trying to make sure that's thought through in terms of new facilities and I think possibly also on-street parking.
Great, thank you.
Bob, I have a question. When you are looking at an intersection and counting the cars, for instance, going through it to determine, the capacity of the intersection, do you also look at the time that it takes to get through an intersection? Because to me, that's as important as the number of cars that go through that. And particularly that happens, the congestion of the numbers of cars, or the time it takes, that happens downtown in a lot of intersections.
Yeah, we do that in a couple of ways. One is just to observe the traffic queues and the extent of how long it takes, but also the counts that we use. There's a analysis procedure that produces a delay for each approach. So yes, we can identify, if you're going northbound on 3rd Avenue at a particular intersection, how much time during the peak time does it take you to get through that intersection?
And when you determine that, what do you do with it? I mean, what sort of things do you
Then what we
to help?
do is look to see if there's anything that reasonably can be done at the intersection. So for instance, if you have a lot of delay at that intersection, particularly if it's on a specific approach, you might see, would adding a turn lane help? And, I think what I would also say is in the downtown areas, like a lot of areas in Nashville, there's not necessarily a lot of additional room to make street improvements. So I think what we recognize is that one of the keys is looking at strategies to try to help reduce new traffic coming to downtown. So that of course leads to I think recommendations as far as improving transit service, making sure that we have good bicycle as well as pedestrian service. And then I think another aspect of it is to look and see what impact future roadway connections and improvements that are possible, what impact they may have. So for example, like the Division Street extension will actually provide a great way for a lot of people to circulate in and out of downtown without having to go further into downtown. So, we have factored that improvement into the analysis of future conditions to evaluate, how much that can help.
Being down there every day, all day long, I can see a lot of problems in a lot of streets, and sometimes they seem very obvious, and it's not just about counting the cars, but about the time it takes to get through intersections, and particularly the Church Street corridor, and of course 4th and Broadway. There's a lot of just really congested areas down there that need some work.
Right. We're trying to address those.
Hey, Corby, as we wrap up, could you put the slide up with the open house info? Feel free to ask questions. I'd like that info to be out there on TV and for everybody to see and write down. And we can send you guys emails to remind you too on this.
Okay. Yes, I encourage you to, if you know people that you think would be interested in coming to the meeting, please encourage them to come.
Okay.
And I noticed there's a website too with the information so that people can access, correct? And I assume the final report will be on there as well, Metro's website?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Bob, appreciate you coming.
All right. Thank you.
Commissioners, appreciate all of you being here.
Mr. Commissioner, before we adjourn, I'd like to have a comment, and that is our very own Commissioner, Miss Mary Fabra, has been appointed by the mayor to be on the AMP Commission of 20 Distinguished Citizens of Nashville, so I'm sure that her meetings will be interesting, to say the least.
Good, congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, that's on another light. Anyone else have anything? Chip?
No, sir.
Mark? Ben? Diane? Captain? Have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Second. All right. Everybody have a good week. Unnumbered alley and on the easterly